I think from young, it has always been ingrained with us that there is this positive linear function between effort and result. If you want to get better grades, you have to study more. You want to get better salary, you have to work harder. Better job, work more. But I recently realized it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to put in more effort to have more result, and in fact you can actually achieve more result by doing less. So in this video, I'd like to introduce two of my favorite principles: the 80-20 rule, which is also known as the Pareto principle, and the Parkinson's law. So if you'd like to know how to do it, stay tuned and I'll show you. Anyways, welcome back to my channel. If you are new to this channel, which I assume is most of you guys, because this is my third video, I'm Nicky Sujadi. In this channel, I'll be sharing relatable and empowering contents to you millennials. So if you like self-help, self-improvement, productivity, mindfulness type of contents, consider subscribing to this channel, because that is what this channel is going to be all about. Anyways, let's get to the topic for today. What I really want to introduce you to the first principle is the 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle. What 80-20 means is that 80% of the result comes from 20% of the effort. Just think about that. Okay, I'm gonna repeat. 80% of the result comes from 20% of the effort. It means whatever you do, if you have a certain task, only 20% of that actually is the one producing 80% of the result. For example, 80% of a company's profit usually comes from 20% of the customers, or even 20% of its product. Just even look at Apple itself. 80% of its revenue comes from 20% of its product, which is most likely the iPhone or the MacBook. 80% of a sports performance usually comes from 20% of the habit. You can even look at the economy. 80% of the economical gain comes from 20% of the company in the world. And even in wealth distribution, 80% of the wealth is controlled by 20% of the population. You can even find it in your own homes. You look at your wardrobe and you'll find that 80% of the time you're wearing 20% of your whole wardrobe collection. So why is it important to understand the 80-20 rule? Because what we just shown is that only 20% of the effort actually is worth the 80% of the result. That means only 20% of the things we do are important enough that produces 80% of the result. And that is so powerful, because all this time we have been putting 100% of the effort, and yet only 20% of that is actually worth 80% of the result. The key to 80-20 is to find that 20%, multiply them, and eliminate the rest. That's it. But the hard thing is to find the 20%, because to be honest, a lot of times we focus on doing everything and we think that everything is important. Look, I think most of us can relate that a lot of times we want to do anything that produces result. No matter how important it is, we just want to do it. If it produces good result, we want to do it, right? Then we think of ways to do those tasks in the fastest possible time, which is why we are so focused on efficiency, getting more things done in a shorter period of time. But what we often forget to do is to look back and see if those things are actually important or not. Let me ask you, does doing unimportant things well make the task important? Does requiring a lot of time make things important? Yet oftentimes we still do them. We still do the task that we are assigned to, even though it might not be important at all. Even though we know it takes so much time and is not worth the result that it produces, we still do them. We just think, you know what, if we can, even if it gives you a minute amount of result, I will still do it. And I know in theory it all makes sense. It seems like, yeah, you have to definitely find the 20%, blah, blah, blah. But it's not as easy as it sounds. Even for me personally, I am still finding that 20%. Just to put you into an example, I've been making visual content and even video contents like this for the past week. And I have to constantly remind myself to find that 20% of the effort. Because I always get so caught up, and this is where the perfectionist side of me come in. I always get so caught up with putting in more effort just to perfect my craft. Just so that, you know what, adding beautiful design will actually be much better. And what I realized is that when I was designing like visual contents for Quarter Life Hack, that I spend 2 times more of the effort on the design rather than on the content itself. I usually will I know what content I want to create, and then I will write it down, and then I'll spend 2 more days to actually perfect the design, and another day to even just publish it. So that's what I realized. And when I heard about this 80-20 rule, I realized that only the content, which is the one that I actually type in and produce, is worth 80% of the result, which makes sense because those are the content that I'm producing. But then I get so caught up with the other design factor, which of course adds to the, result of it, I guess. But I can in fact eliminate that. I can make a minimalist design and produce more content, which is the concept of multiplying that 20%. Producing more content so that I can actually post more. So instead of just posting 1, I can actually post 3 times if I were to use this correctly. And it's still a tough thing for me because I still think I need the perfect design. Even this video as well, I still think that maybe having different angles, different scenes, maybe putting in B-roll would be good, but I get so caught up with that. And I have to constantly remind myself, okay, you know what? I shouldn't be too perfectionist. I shouldn't be too overemphasizing on these small little details because I know it wouldn't produce the 80% of the result. So yeah, that's really how I have actually used 80-20 in my life. And I think you can also use 80-20 a lot of things for any task that you do. So in this 80-20 rule, one thing to just remember is find the 20%, multiply them, and eliminate the rest. That is it. Rule number 2. This is called Parkinson's Law. Parkinson's Law states that the work expands to fill the time allowed for it. Let me repeat. Work expands to fill the time allowed for it. In other words, the more time we are given, the more work we will produce to fill the time. And how does this actually make sense? An example would be if I were to give you 1 hour to produce a report, which I know it sounds very absurd, you would really just dive deep into the key messages. You'll find the key points, you make the executive summary, you find the graphs that is essential to make your conclusion, and that's it, right? But what if I were to give you 1 month, which is an extreme end? You'll start looking at templates. You try to perfect the design of the report. You try to find more appendixes to support your conclusion. But if you see about that, you are just expanding your work to fill up that extra time. And if you notice, when you're given a limited time to do it, for example, the 1 hour, you will inevitably only focus on the 20% that produces 80% of the result, because the 20% is the one that is giving you the most result. But then, when we give you more time, you'll be doing 80% of the extra work that only gives 20% of the result. And so this is where it actually comes hand in hand. So in Parkinson's Law, we shorten the time to limit the tasks for the important. While on the other hand, the 80-20 rule, we limit the tasks to shorten the time. And so this is where it actually complements with each other. These two concepts, if understood correctly, can really elevate the things that you can do. So here's really the key message to this video. If there's only one thing that you can get away from this video, it's this, okay? When you're given a task or a project, set a short and clear deadline, and then find the 20% of the effort that you know will produce 80% of the result. Multiply them and eliminate the rest. That is it. That is really it. And by doing this, you will achieve more by doing less. Alright, that is it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.